2026 will not be decided in December. It will be decided by what you do in January. Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you a truth. Most people learn too late. You don't lose the year in December. You lose it in January. Because January is not just a month. January is a multiplier. If you win January, you don't spend the rest of the year chasing goals, fixing mistakes, or explaining why you or behind the year starts chasing you. Most people treat January like a warm-up. Winners treat January like a launch pad. And that's the difference. You see, the problem isn't that people dawn and work hard. The problem is they work late. They wait for motivation. They wait for clarity. They wait for confidence. But confidence doesn't come from waiting. It comes from execution. January is where execution creates momentum, and momentum creates inevitability. Here's the truth nobody likes to hear. The year doesn't get better. People get better, or they don't. In January, average people chase goals. High-level thinkers build systems. Goals are what you want. Systems are what? Guarantee you get it. When you build the system early, your habits, your schedule, your standards, you don't need willpower later. The structure does the work. That's why winners look calm in October. They're not lucky. They're not guessing. They already did the heavy thinking in January. Momentum is a dangerous thing in a good way, because once momentum starts moving, it's easier to keep going than to stop. But when you delay momentum, you create resistance, and resistance costs energy. January is where you remove resistance. You decide what matters, what doesn't, what ends, what begins. And clarity is power. Confusion is expensive. Clarity is profitable. When you get clear in January, you don't waste February wondering. You don't waste June adjusting. You don't waste November panning. King, you execute. And let me say this clearly. Winning January is not about doing more. It's about becoming someone different. Because behavior doesn't change outcomes. Identity does. When you decide early who you are, your actions fall in line automatically. You don't chase discipline. You don't chase consistency. You don't chase success. You express it. And once that identity is locked in, the year has no choice but to follow your lead. So if you're waiting for the year 2026 to give you permission to win, you're already behind. But if you take command of January, if you decide early, move early, and commit early, you won't chase the year. The year will chase you. January is not just the month that opens the calendar. It is the month that programs the direction of everything that follows. Most people think January is about motivation, fresh starts, and good intentions, but in reality, January is about trajectory. Tone is emotional. It's how you feel at the beginning. Trajectory is mathematical. It determines where you will land. You can feel excited in January and still end the year disappointed if you never set the right direction. What you do in the first 30 days establishes speed, alignment, and altitude. Just like a plane leaving the runway, a small adjustment at takeoff can change the destination by thousands of miles later. January works the same way. The habits you install, the standards you accept, the decisions you delay or execute, these things quietly lock in the direction of your year long before most people realize what's happening. When January is wasted, the rest of the year is spent correcting, chasing, and compensating. People say, I'll get serious in March, or once things settle down, I'll lock in. But life doesn't settle down, it speeds up. January is the slowest the year will ever be. That's why it matters. It's the only window where clarity is cheap and distractions are manageable. The people who win understand that January. Uri is not about doing everything. It's about doing the right things early. They don't overload themselves with unrealistic resolutions. They simplify. They decide what matters most and eliminate what doesn't. That clarity creates momentum, and momentum reduces effort. When you start the year moving in the right direction, progress becomes natural instead of forced. January also exposes identity. Thank you. It reveals whether you are someone who reacts or someone who leads. Most people let the year happen to them. High performers design the year before it demands anything from them. They set boundaries early because boundaries created later feel like restrictions. In January, discipline feels like choice. Later in the year, it feels like sacrifice. That's why the work done in January is lighter. but more valuable. You're not fighting fatigue yet. You're not trying to recover lost time. You're building from a place of control. Trajectory is about systems, not motivation. Motivation fades. Systems compound. When you build your routines, your schedule, and your priorities in January, you don't need to keep restarting. You don't need constant inspiration. Your environment starts pulling you forward automatically. That's why people who win January seem calm later in the year while others are stressed. They're not working harder, they're correcting less. Every decision made early removes 10 decisions later. Every habit installed early saves energy for months. January doesn't promise success, but it makes success easier. It doesn't guarantee results, but it increases probability. And P, probability repeated daily becomes inevitability. When you respect January, you reduce friction for the rest of the year. You stop sprinting in December because you walked with purpose in January. You stop chasing goals because your trajectory is already aligned with them. In the end, the year doesn't reward enthusiasm, it rewards direction. And direction is decided first. Most people spend lives chasing goals, believing that once they reach a specific outcome, everything will finally fall into place. They set targets, make vision boards, and count milestones, yet year after year they end up frustrated, tired, and wondering why the results never last. The problem is not ambition, the problem is the strategy. Goals are destinations, but systems are the roads that actually get you there. Without a road, a destination is just a wish. Winners understand this early. They don't obsess over the finish line, they obsess over what must be done daily, consistently, and automatically to make success inevitable. Goals are exciting because they are emotional. They give people something to dream about. Systems, on the other hand, are practical. They are often boring, repetitive, and invisible to outsiders. That's why most people avoid them. It feels more rewarding to talk about what you want than to quietly build the structure required to support it. But emotion fades and excitement expires. Systems don't depend on feelings. They operate whether you feel motivated or not. When winners build systems early, they remove reliance on willpower and replace it with design. Their environment, routines, and rules begin to work for them instead of against them. Chasing goals creates a cycle of starting and stopping. People push hard for a short period, burn out, fall behind, then restart with new goals and renewed promises. Systems break that cycle. A system doesn't ask how far you still have to go, it only asks what the next step is. When you focus on systems, progress becomes sustainable. You don't need dramatic breakthroughs because small, repeated actions compound over time. This is why people who rely on systems appear consistent, while others appear talented but unstable. Consistency is not a personality trait, it's a structural advantage. Building systems early is critical because it shapes behavior before pressure increases. Early in the process, you have more space, more control over your schedule, and more freedom to experiment. This is when routines can be installed with less resistance. Once the year accelerates and responsibilities pile up, changing behavior becomes harder. Winners understand that systems created under calm conditions will protect them during chaos. They don't wait until life is busy to get organized. They organize first so they can handle what's coming. Another reason winners focus on systems is that systems scale while goals don't. A goal is static. You either reach it or you don't. A system continues producing results long after the original goal is met. When the goal is achieved, most people relax, lose momentum, and regress. When a system is in place, success doesn't end at the goal, it continues beyond it. This is why some people have one good year while others build decades of growth. The difference is not desire, it's infrastructure. Systems also reduce decision fatigue. When your actions are pre-decided, you conserve energy for what truly matters. You're not constantly negotiating with yourself about what to do next. The system tells you. This creates clarity, speed, and confidence. Over time, that dense compounds because results become predictable. Predictability builds trust in yourself and from others. People trust those who show up consistently, and systems make showing up unavoidable. In the end, goals are temporary, But systems are permanent. Goals tell you where you want to go. Systems ensure you keep moving, even when motivation disappears. Most people chase goals and wonder why success feels unstable. Winners build systems early and let success become routine. Momentum beats motivation every time because motivation is emotional and temporary, while momentum is mechanical and self-sustaining. Motivation depends on how you feel in the moment. Your mood, your energy, your confidence, even the weather. Momentum doesn't care about feelings. Once it starts moving, it carries you forward, whether you're excited or exhausted. That's why people who rely on motivation are constantly starting over, while people who understand momentum rarely stop. They don't wait to feel ready. They move first and let movement create the feeling later. Motivation is often mistaken for discipline, but they are not the same. Motivation says, I'll act when I feel inspired. Momentum says, I'm ready in motion, so stopping would take more effort than continuing. This is why the hardest part of any process is the beginning. The first step feels heavy because nothing is pulling you forward yet. Once momentum exists, effort decreases. Progress feels easier, not because the work changed, but because resistance did. Winners understand this and focus on starting small, starting early, and king consistently. They know that speed comes later, movement comes first. Most people wait for motivation because it feels powerful in the moment. They watch something inspiring, feel energized, and make big promises. But motivation fades quickly because it's not designed to last. Life interrupts, pressure increases, fatigue sets in. When motivation disappears, so does action. Momentum, on the other hand, is built through repetition. Each small action reinforces the next. The brain begins to expect movement, and stopping starts to feel uncomfortable. That discomfort is productive. It keeps you going when motivation would have quit. Momentum also changes identity. When you take consistent action, you stop seeing yourself as someone who tries and start seeing yourself as someone who does. That shift is powerful. You no longer ask, do I feel like it today? You ask, what's the next step? Over time, this creates confidence rooted in evidence, not emotion. Confidence built on momentum is stable because it's backed by proof. You've already shown yourself that you move even when conditions aren't perfect. Another reason momentum wins is that it compresses time. Results appear faster when actions are stacked daily rather than sporadic bursts of effort. 10 minutes every day beats 2 hours once a week because consistency compounds. Momentum turns small actions into big outcomes by removing gaps. Gaps are where doubt grows. Gaps are where excuses live. Momentum closes those gaps. When there's no long break between actions, there's no time for overthinking. Momentum also protects you from burnout. Motivation-driven people tend to overexert themselves when they feel inspired. It's on crash. Momentum-driven people pace themselves. They build rhythms instead of sprints. This makes progress sustainable. You don't need extreme effort, you need repeatable effort. Over time, repeatable effort outperforms intensity. That's why people who seem less talented but more consistent often surpass those who rely on bursts of motivation. In the end, motivation is a spark, but momentum is a fire. Sparks fade quickly if they're not fed. Momentum feeds itself. Once it's established, it carries you forward with less effort, less stress, and more certainty. That's why the smartest move is not to wait for motivation, but to take action now. Because action creates momentum, and momentum never lies. Clarity in January eliminates confusion in December, because the decisions you make early determine the pressure you feel later. Confusion at the end of the year is rarely about lack of effort. It is almost always about lack of direction. When people reach December overwhelmed, stressed, and uncertain, it's not because the year moved too fast. It's because they never clearly decided how they were going to move in the first place. January is the month where thinking is cheap and consequent. Us are low. It is the only time of the year where you can pause, reflect, and choose your direction before urgency starts demanding your attention. Clarity is not about knowing everything. It's about knowing what matters most. In January, you have the opportunity to define priorities before distractions compete for them. When priorities are undefined, Everything feels important, and when everything NG is important, nothing gets done well. This is how confusion is created. People spend the year reacting instead of executing, responding instead of leading. By the time December arrives, they are exhausted from motion but unsure of progress. Clarity in January prevents this by creating a filter. Every opportunity, request, and challenge is measured against what was already decided. That filter S saves time, energy, and focus. Confusion is expensive because it multiplies decisions. When there is no clear plan, every situation requires extra thought. Should I do this or that? Should I say yes or no? Should I continue or change direction? Those questions drain mental energy over time. Clarity removes unnecessary decisions. When the path is clear, action becomes automatic. You don't negotiate with yourself every day because the decision was already made. This is why people with clear direction appear calm under pressure. They are not guessing. They are executing a plan they committed to early. January clarity also shapes expectations. When you are clear about what you are building, you stop expecting instant results and start respecting process. Many people feel disappointed in December because their expectations were unrealistic or undefined. They hoped things would work out without clearly mapping how they would get there. Clarity replaces hope with structure. It allows you to measure progress accurately, not emotionally. Instead of asking, am I behind? You ask, am I on track? That shift alone removes anxiety. Another reason clarity in January matters is that it creates alignment. Your time, energy, and resources begin moving in the same direction instead of pulling against each other. Without clarity, people are busy but scattered. They start projects they don't finish, commit to paths they don't believe in, and say yes to things that don't serve their goals. By December, they feel lost because they've been moving in too many directions at once. Clarity narrows focus, and focus creates depth. Depth creates results. Clarity also builds confidence. When you know why you are doing what you are doing, doubt has less room to grow. Uncertainty breeds fear, but clarity breeds commitment. Even when challenges arise, clear thinkers don't panic. They adjust. They understand that obstacles don't mean the plan was wrong. They mean the plan is being tested. This perspective keeps them steady throughout the year while second guess every setback. In the end, December does not create confusion, it reveals it. The chaos people feel at the end of the year is simply the result of unclear thinking at the beginning. When you take January seriously, when you decide, define, and commit, you don't arrive in December wondering what happened. You arrive knowing exactly why the year turned out the way it did, winning Janu. Area is about identity, not hustle, because hustle focuses on what you do, while identity determines who you are. Most people believe success comes from doing more, working longer hours, pushing harder, sacrificing rest, and staying constantly busy. But hustle without identity is unstable. It relies on pressure and adrenaline, and once those fade, so does consistency. Identity, on the other hand, operates beneath effort. When you decide who you are at the beginning of the year, your actions no longer require constant force. They become a natural expression of that decision. Identity answers a deeper question than goals ever can. Goals ask, what do I want? Identity asks, who do I choose to be? When January is treated as a season of identity formation rather than overexertion, everything hangs. You stop trying to act disciplined and start becoming disciplined. You stop chasing focus and start embodying focus. This is powerful because behavior follows identity automatically. People don't struggle to do what aligns with who they believe they are. Struggle happens when actions conflict with self-image. Hustle often creates the illusion of progress. Being busy feels productive, but busyness without direction leads to burnout. January is not meant for exhaustion, it is meant for alignment. When identity is clear, hustle becomes unnecessary. You don't need to push yourself into action because your standards pull you forward. You wake up already decided. Your routines, choices, and priorities are guided by who you are becoming, not by how much effort you can force out of yours. Identity-based growth also creates consistency. Hustle-based growth comes in bursts, intense effort followed by collapse. Identity-based growth is steady. It compounds quietly. When someone sees themselves as a person who plans, they plan. When they see themselves as someone who follows through, they follow through. There is no inner debate. January is the best time to lock in that self-image because the year has not yet challenged it. You are not recovering from failure. You are setting the standard. Another reason identity matters more than hustle is that identity scales. Hustle is limited by energy and time. Identity operates even when energy is low. A person with a strong identity doesn't need perfect conditions to act. They act because it's who they are. This creates resilience. When obstacles appear later in the year, identity-driven people don't quit. They adapt. They don't see challenges as signs to stop, but as confirmations of the path they chose. Winning January through identity also changes how you relate to discipline. Discipline stops feeling like restriction and starts feeling like self-respect. You're not forcing yourself to say no, you're honoring who you decide to be. This shift removes resentment and replaces it with pride. Over time, that pride strengthens identity even further, creating a feedback loop of growth. In the end, January is not about proving how hard you can work. It's about deciding who you are before the year tries to decide for you. Hustle reacts to pressure. Identity creates direction. When identity is established early, the rest owe. The year follows naturally, and winning January becomes less about effort and more about alignment. When the foundation is strong, the year has no choice but to follow because everything built on top of it is supported, stabilized, and directed. A weak foundation forces constant repairs. A strong foundation allows growth. Most people try to build results without first building structure, and they wonder why progress feels unstable. The truth is, the year doesn't collapse because of a single bad month. It struggles because the foundation was never properly set. January is where that foundation is laid, and what you establish there quietly dictates how the rest of the year behaves. A foundation is made of decisions, standards, and systems. These are not visible to others, but they are. Felt in every outcome. When standards are unclear, performance fluctuates. When systems are missing, effort is wasted. A strong foundation removes randomness. It creates predictability. You begin to see consistent results not because you're lucky, but because your structure supports them. This is why some people seem to move forward regardless of circumstances. They're not reacting to the year. The year is responding to how they built. When the foundation is weak, every challenge feels like a crisis. Small disruptions cause major setbacks. Miss a week, lose momentum. Face a setback, abandon the plan. But when the foundation is strong, challenges are absorbed, not amplified. You may slow down, but you don't stop. You may adjust, but you don't collapse. Strength at the base creates flexibility at the top. That flexibility is what allows progress to continue under pressure. A strong foundation also eliminates the need for constant motivation. When your routines are set, your priorities are clear, and your systems are working, action becomes default. You don't need to convince yourself every day. The structure carries you. This is why people with solid foundations appear disciplined without effort. Discipline is no longer something they chase. It's something their environment enforces. The year follows because the groundwork leaves no alternative. Another powerful effect of a strong foundation is confidence. Not emotional confidence, but structural confidence, the kind that comes from knowing your process works. When you trust your foundation, setbacks don't shake you. Delays don't discourage you. You understand that results are a matter of time, not hope. This mindset keeps you steady while others panic, and steadiness over time always wins. The foundation also determines pace. Without structure, people rush early, burn out, then scramble later. With a strong foundation, progress is measured and sustainable. You don't need dramatic pushes because consistency is already built in. This is how the year begins to follow your lead instead of forcing you to chase it. Your actions align naturally with your long-term direction. In the end, the year does not reward effort alone. It rewards preparation. When the foundation is solid, success stops being accidental. The year moves in the direction you set because the base you built supports nothing else. Strong foundations don't guarantee EA, but they guarantee progress. And once progress is inevitable, the year has no choice but to follow. January is not a motivational moment. It is a strategic decision. It is the point where direction is chosen, systems are built, identity is formed, and momentum begins. By the time most people realize the year is moving fast, it's already too late to change its direction. But those who took January rise seriously are not surprised by their results. They expected them. When you build early, you don't rush later. When you decide first, you don't panic at the end. You stop chasing progress because progress is already built into your structure. The year no longer controls your pace, your foundation does. So the question is not whether 2026 will move fast, it will. The question is whether it will MO for you or past you. Win January by design, not by accident. Set the trajectory. Build the system. Become the person who follows through. Do that, and you won't spend the year trying to catch up. The year will have no choice but to follow.